everyone. Thanks for being with us tonight. So let's just, I guess I'll introduce our panelists here and then we'll dive in. So we have Mark Steinberg, violinist for the Brentano String Quartet. And then we have Melinda Wagner, the composer of the second part of tonight's program, the Dido Reimagined. And then we have Stephanie Fleischmann, the librettist. So this is a new work that you're going to hear all about momentarily. So I'd love to kick it off just by asking the three of you to tell us a little bit about your history together. How did you come to be working on this piece together?
Well, my quartet was putting together a project with Dawn Upshaw, and I had the idea that it would be wonderful to have a big new piece for singer and quartet, a sort of monodrama, and was on the search for an idea that might make that work, a character who the singer could be. And I thought of Dido from Dido and Aeneas. And this idea came to put together a program where the first half, which you'll hear, is all English Renaissance and Baroque music and would wind up with the famous Dido's Lament from Purcell's opera Dido and Aeneas, which is, of course, one of the most beautiful arias ever written. And that would introduce the character of Dido, and that we might have the opportunity to commission someone to write a piece based on the character of Dido. And so Dawn and the quartet got together and we started talking about composers who we admired and whose works we loved. And the person who came to mind that we all agreed on and were all really excited about was Melinda Wagner. And we did not know each other before, and I just sent a random email trying to convince her that this might be a good idea.
I think it's really interesting that no, we did not have any connections before. I had never met Mark. I didn't know Stephanie. I didn't know that a librettist would be coming on board. So, of course, now we're all fast friends, but we ended up putting this thing together, and it's been really rewarding.
So you said you didn't know a librettist would be coming on board. What's the story there?
Well, I looked for a pre-existing text of some kind, and nothing really spoke to me. And there are different versions of the Dido story. Most of them are quite old, and after not being able to find anything, then I thought I really do have to find someone to write a text for me. So Stephanie's name came right to the top of several librettists I looked at, and she came very, very highly recommended by other colleagues. So I did the same thing to her. You sent her a random email, and I said, "Hey, would you be interested in writing this piece with me?" And she said yes. And she came up with an incredibly creative and beautiful way of portraying Dido sort of in modern times.
So I think we'll spend most of our time talking about the piece, the new piece. But before we do that, maybe Mark, could you say a few more words about how the two halves of the program speak to each other? I understand how Dido's Lament at the end of the first half of the program, leads right into the reimagined Dido. But how do the other works, the English Renaissance and Baroque works, speak to, or how are they in relation to the second part?
I'm not sure that they really are. I think that they're a setup for the second part in a certain way, and also the idea of chamber music involving a singer and pieces that are maybe the works that we do with Dawn. So the first half is a mix of viol consort music and songs. Some of the songs, like the Dowland songs, would have been with lute originally, so it's very intimate music. But the bookends of the first half are arias from operas, from The Fairy Queen and from Dido and Aeneas. So that puts the relationship of the singer and the accompanying forces in a slightly different light. And I think probably, I don't know if you would agree with this, but I would say Mindy's piece probably lies somewhere between those, or touches on both the intimacy of a song with just two people originally and a sort of operatic idea. Is that fair to say?
But I've heard the concert a couple of times, and a lot of the songs have to do with love. So thematically, there is, from my perspective, a link between the two halves as well.
That's definitely true.
Great. And Stephanie, so what is it about the character of Dido that spoke to you, or what aspects of this historical mythic character did you tap into and reinvent, and why, how?
Well, we did it together, and Mindy came to me and said, this is a contemporary, if we place her in contemporary times or within the sphere of our experience, what does that mean? And we talked about that. And we both immediately decided that we didn't feel that we wanted her to fall in love, have her heart broken, and then commit suicide. That was not what we wanted.
And that's what she's always done in the past?
Yes. So she throws herself on a pyre, a burning funeral pyre. And she is played with by the gods and sort of messed with. Her head is messed with a little bit. But really that, to us, felt like what love does to someone. It messes with your head. But we, the thing that's compelling about Dido as a historical and literary figure is that, or mythic figure, is that she was a very powerful woman in her time. And she was the queen of Carthage, and she experienced hardship, and she would overcome it with her brains and her presence of mind and her incredible leadership. So that drew us to her as a strong woman. And then we went from there.
Just trying to reimagine this historical character. Is she historical? Is she real? Is Dido a real person?
Yes.
Yeah, definitively yes.
I mean, I think there are multiple histories of Dido. So
Okay.
like, where and which and how.
Okay. Oh.
Which histories do you think make her a real person?
Well, here's the thing, is that here I am at Dartmouth, but I'm not a classicist, I'm a writer. And so what I do is I delve into, I read Libretto, I read about her. I spoke to someone who directed the Preshow opera. And I'm not an expert, I'm an imaginer. So, and I do research and somehow osmose into who this person is in the context of what I know. So I don't have a good answer to that.
So the idea was reimagining this character for today's world?
Yes.
Wonderful. And I wonder if Mindy and Stephanie, and then maybe Mark can chime in, can speak about the process of creating this new work. Did you go back and forth? Were there multiple drafts? At what point did the quartet see it? And how did you respond to it? Was it what you imagined when you finally got it?
Well, it happened during the pandemic, which changed everything. Ordinarily, Stephanie and I would have sat around the kitchen table and, hammered this thing out. But we were not able to be with each other at all. So I wanted to wait for her to give me the words. I really couldn't start before she had a substantial amount of work done. I let her do it. I mean, we had that important conversation about what kind of person we wanted Dido to be and what her experiences would be, and that was essential. And then I just, she just went on her own, Stephanie, and hammered out the piece. And once I got it, then I took over the project. And again, not really being able to get in touch with Stephanie or to play something on the piano or anything like that. So it was odd. We wouldn't have chosen to work that way. But it got finished, and then I just handed it over to them. It's bizarre. And I don't think that we ever talked about it during the process.
Again, it was the timing of the whole thing was not what anyone could have imagined beforehand. So we received the piece, and we were able to look at the score a bit, but we didn't start working on it because there were no performances in sight.
It was going to premiere here,
right? We were supposed to have several days here to workshop the piece together, which would have been lovely. The piece has had a very strange birth in a lot of ways. And I mean, one of the ways was that when it finally was time to actually start learning it, we weren't able to get together with Dawn because there were health concerns and so on and so forth. And
Who is Dawn?
Who is Dawn? Dawn is our singer, our wonderful singer, Dawn Upshaw. And so it was a very, very strange process for us. We've never done anything like it before, in that the piece, in many important ways revolves around the singer. And we had so many rehearsals without the singer, which we would do normally. We would have a few, but we would have had Dawn there very early on and start to put it together. And so we had to imagine her part. She listened to our rehearsals over Zoom. So she was sort of there, but she wasn't singing. We weren't hearing her. And so we sort of put it together quite a lot without having her with us. And then eventually she came in. And so we've never worked like this before. And I don't think we would ever choose to work like this again, but I think we've recovered from it. I think that the piece has come together. It felt very uncertain about how that was going to happen, through no one's fault really, just through the circumstances of how the world was.
And what was the time span from when you started, I guess you first had the idea and then you ladies started working on it and then it was finally completed?
It was 2018, wasn't it, when I first got your
about
email?
right.
And then, does that sound right? And then I spent the next 2 months looking for a text. I failed at finding something, and in February of 2019, I spoke with Stephanie. And then it wasn't until the following fall, does that sound right, that you started work? I can't remember.
Yeah, something like that. And then we did have one moment at the kitchen table, like right before everything closed down.
It was the next day.
Yeah.
I drove up to Hudson, New York, and the next day I got home and all the schools were closed.
Oh.
I mean, it became real that we were not going to be seeing each other. So it was extremely odd. Well, for everyone.
Did you know that you were writing for Dawn? At what point? Yeah. So how does writing for a particular voice impact the development of the project?
Actually, it's a great luxury because I know Dawn's voice. I've known it for many years. I know her as a person, not well, but enough so that I can picture her, and I know what kind of acting abilities she has. She's a very fine actress as well as being a great singer. So that is a really great luxury for any composer to actually be able to put a face to the name. When you're in your studio looking at the blank page, it's very helpful.
Do you think if you'd been writing for someone else, do you think it would have changed the actual work that you created?
I don't know. I mean, I can't answer that question. If I knew that person, it certainly would have changed some things, I'm sure. But if it was, some soprano out there, gosh, I don't know. I mean, that's such a hypothetical. I'm not sure. But I would have written my music. You know what I mean? It would have had the same characteristics and little harmonic left-hand turns and all of that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And then, Stephanie, I wonder if you can tell us, I know there's a little bit about this in the program, but in case folks don't get a chance to look at the program notes, can you kind of tell us, in a nutshell, the story here?
Sure. It's we're talking a lot about the pandemic, but really the piece is, in a way, very much about sort of isolation or solitude, because what she does instead of kill herself is she removes herself from our world, she is able to go to an island. It's a place that I have been many times, where there are no cars or stores. Like, there's very little civilization, and she spends the rest of her life on this island alone, and has this incredible relationship with the natural world. And it's sort of a journey from the urban to this remote natural place, and what that does as time sort of passes through us.
Yeah, great. I'd love to see if there are any questions from our audience. Yes, Brother John.
Thank you. Can you say a little bit about the reimagining of this character plays out music? What's sort of like, what's the same and what's different?
Well, first of all, the text I was given is incredibly richly hued and multi-layered. So each of the sections are in different tenses, and the actual speaker in the text is different in each of the movements. It's first person, second person, third person. So, and one of them, for example, is a memory of the island when Dido was a child. So I purposely changed the music for that. I made it more innocent and not neutral sounding, but not as thorny or angular. Just a story being told in a little bit of a lighter way. So I changed the style for the person who was speaking, and then later, I mean, you'll hear this. There's a much more dramatic movement. And of course, I just sort of went for broke with that music. But I mean broke, not baroque. Okay. So sure, I mean, I followed the text as much as I could, and it was actually great because it was very clear what kind of music I needed to write at every given moment.
Yeah, in the black.
What effect did it have, the original music, what effect did that have on your music? I mean, if it had been written by Chopin, somebody would have totally different. So how did the original music affect yours, if at all?
It didn't. I mean, I know the lament. I've known it since I was a kid. I actually sang in that opera. So I knew all of the music, and especially that of Belinda, the handmaid. Don't ask me to sing it now, but no, I didn't. As much as I adore that music, I almost consciously did not go there. Did not want to quote it. Did not want to be cute.
Yes, sir.
Well, then, what are your musical influences? Should we hear echoes of any particular composer or teacher?
I think that's up to you. I mean, I'm not going to tell you how to hear it. So, good try.
Other questions? Maybe one from our class of students.
Oh, this is a class?
It is.
Okay. Come on, this is your big chance. No?
Yes, in the back.
What was the hardest part of composing music?
The hardest part of composing the music.
You know what? All of it's hard. And I'm not being dramatic here. It's all hard. It's very hard work. You know, I have people come up to me and say, "Oh, you're a composer. That sounds like so much fun." And of course, it is fun, or else we wouldn't do it. But it really is a lot of hard work. And it's true. Some of it is easier than some pieces are easier than others. But I found it very challenging to work with. I mean, the text is extremely rich, and I so wanted to honor every syllable of that. So that's something I was aware of.
Yeah.
So I gather that Dartmouth did not choose the Dido story, you chose the Dido story. So what did Dartmouth ask them? Did they give you any direction at all, or did they just commission the
And Dartmouth was one of a group of presenting organizations that was generous enough to help us make this happen. So we presented this idea to a number of places, and the idea of this entire program, including the piece with Mindy and Stephanie, and to be done with Dawn, the entire conception was presented to a number of places, and we were very moved and touched that so many places came together to make it possible for us to do this and to have that kind of support.
And Mark, I wonder if you could speak a little bit to, as musicians, is there a difference? What does it feel like to be playing the older works versus such a new work? Is there a difference to the approach, or something in your heads or in your bodies?
I would say yes and no. I mean, with the earlier music, we, in a certain way, even though that it's so removed from us in time, in a certain way we have more of a context for it because we've played other music by these composers from this era, et cetera, whereas we have not played any of Mindy's works before. We've heard them, but not played them. And so in a certain way, you come to something new and it's like you're learning a brand new language. On the other hand, we have Mindy. We have the composer here to ask questions, to hear her describe it, to get her request, to hear her gesture or sing things. And that's a great luxury, and it feels really wonderful. It makes us feel like we're part of the birth of the piece also. And there have been many changes. I mean, not huge changes, but many small changes along the way. It's been tweaked. And I think both Mindy and Stephanie have made some alterations, including tonight. We'll hear some things that no one has heard before. So that's exciting to sort of feel it start to change and morph and come into its own, and we feel a part of that process. And it also the chance to work with a composer and to feel like the piece is alive in your hands and coming into itself as you go through it is something that we take into our work with earlier composers. It's very easy to forget, if you're playing a Beethoven quartet, that it's not a fait accompli that was always there and could only be that. It's an actual person who is making decisions. And once you reawaken that idea, I think it does change how you play the music and how you approach it and your interpretive choices. And so in a sense, it's liberating and freeing and exciting, and it's both different and the same.
Great. Any other questions from our audience? Yes?
When you're composing, are you relying on mostly your ear to anticipate what should be written next, or is it a lot of reflection based on who's performing and how different performance should sound and different sounds should be included? Is it a lot of just reading and figure out what belongs to it?
It's sort of all of the above. I think of our brains as being sort of this water wheel in a way, where we're engaging different parts of it for different tasks, right? So some part of the composing is, figuring out technically what works. For instance, what an instrument can actually do. Those are more pragmatic issues. And then, of course, what comes next. So when it comes to that kind of thinking, which is probably left brain, I don't know, but or right brain, I'm not sure, but I was told left brain because music is a language for composers. But in any case, I am old school. I lay down the pages on the floor and I conduct through the piece every day and try to listen to it as an observer. And often the idea that should come next is actually dictated to me by the piece. So that doesn't always work, of course, but and then other days I'm thinking about specific performers. So it's not systematic in any way, but I will say though, when I'm having a bad creative day where things aren't working, that's a good time to start maybe revising or erasing or doing the less interesting, more mundane tasks. So And there are always plenty of those.
Go ahead.
Do you find that like your process is usually the same, or does it change with each piece, or certain like inspiration that you hear for different songs that you're writing on?
Does the process change?
The process is pretty much the same. I will say though, over the years, I've had to change a lot about it. You know, when I had children, they're grown up now, but they still don't get it, that the morning is when I work. Like, they will still call me in the middle of the morning when I'm right in the middle of something. I mean, it's amazing. I tell them, please don't call me at 10 o'clock, I'm gonna be working, and it just never.
At least they call you.
They call me. But, you know, so that was a major adjustment, and, but it's pretty much the same.
Yeah, go ahead.
Did I hear you say that you lay the composition paper out on the floor? So that
Yes.
you see it as a whole, is that right?
Well, of course, many of my colleagues are working on computers now, and computers are great, except you can only see one page at a time. So when I lay it out on the floor, I'm actually seeing the whole piece. And if I can't see specific notes, I know that idea is over by the window. So it's a bit of a mnemonic, right? For me, I don't have to think about the notes, I think about the window. So I know what's going on over there just by looking at it. And the only time this has become a little overwieldy is when I've written a very, very long orchestral piece, because my house isn't really big enough. I think with one of them I had to go down the stairs and into the den, you know, which is 2 floors down, and with a cat and 2 little kids, that was took a lot of time to set up, you know. But anyway,
I love
yes.
that. And any final questions? Yes, and then I have one more for all of you. Go ahead. Sorry, could you start again? I couldn't hear you. So it's about the sources and what retellings of the Dido myth or history are there?
I really focused on the Aeneid the most. And there are fewer, I'm working on a Medea right now, and there's so many different versions of that, but there are, again, I'm not an expert. I found the Virgil to really speak to me and to be like what I needed. And the Preshow, like those 2 things were kind of grounded me. And I mean, you can go really deep into something and keep researching, but this, I also knew that this was a journey, and I knew the world that it was going to live in, the sort of geographical space of it, so that was enough for me.
Great. So maybe we can wrap up with just each of you telling us what you think one thing you would like folks to listen for tonight.
My husband's a professional musician as well, and he said that is the best quartet I've ever heard. So I can't stress this enough. Performers are our collaborators. You know, we work on a piece together, and the piece doesn't come to life until it's played, and really until it's heard. So I want you to listen carefully, because you're not going to hear a performance like this very often in your lives.
That's incredibly generous of you to say, and we're the ones who feel very, very lucky to be a part of this brand new creation. And I have nothing that I want you to listen for. I just hope that everyone has a beautiful and emotional experience. Really, every note of music on this program is heartfelt and beautiful and meaningful. And we've loved playing this program, and we're really excited to share it with all of you.
Yeah, and with a Dido, I would just say, let the music take you on a journey, because it really does. And if you sort of allow that, I think it's a really beautiful experience.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Stephanie and Melinda and Mark, and thank you all for being here.